This pie chart represents where the money comes from that pays the commission of a buyer's realtor. There are 4 sections, one for each party involved in a real estate transaction. Green is the buyers, and their portion is the smallest. Historically speaking, buyers already have lots of different costs associated with a transaction, from fees to the closing attorney to the lender, the down payment. So usually the buyer does not pay for the commission for their realtor. Blue is the seller's realtor, and while they pay for marketing the listing, the commission for the buyer's realtor rarely originates from the seller's realtor. Red is the buyer's realtor, and while the standard commission for realtors has been 3%, it certainly has decreased, and buyer's realtors have absorbed some of that decrease in the commission. And yellow is the seller, and their portion has always been the largest. Historically, almost all of the commission for the buyer's realtor is paid for by the seller. The lawsuit against the National Association of Realtors was not about the amount of money associated with commissions, but it was the sellers arguing that too often they were the only ones responsible for this commission. In other words, they would say that this pie chart was not fair, that it didn't change enough, that it was too rigid. So as part of the settlement for this lawsuit, the National Association of Realtors agreed to prohibit the offer of commission to the buyer's agent on the home listing. Whether you were looking at a home on the MLS or Zillow or Redfin, the amount that the seller was going to pay the buyer's realtor was stated on that home listing. This was done to create the role of the buyer's agent and to make sure that buyers had representation in a real estate transaction, but sellers argued that putting this in the listing made the commission too often come from them, the sellers. Now that the offer of commission to the buyer's realtor has been removed from the listing, the buyer's realtor will be required to negotiate where their commission comes from with the other 3 parties in the transaction. And everybody wants to know who now will pay the buyer's realtor. In other words, what will this new pie chart look like? So let's answer that. Because realtor practices differ from state to state and even from city to city within the same state, the new makeup of this pie chart will differ depending on the location of the real estate transaction. For example, in an area where buyer closing costs are maybe a little lower than average, the buyer might be willing to contribute to the buyer's realtor. And in an area where home prices are a little higher than average, the seller might be willing to contribute to the buyer's realtor commission. And it also might be that the buyer's realtor has to absorb more of this decrease in the commission, or that the seller's realtor may contribute to the buyer's realtor commission. In any case, the point is that this pie chart will now fluctuate as a result of the NAR lawsuit and will be different from city to city and even from realtor to realtor. Any news article or YouTube video that claims to know the new makeup of this pie chart or where realtor commissions will come from is incorrect. There's not a new standard for where realtor commissions will come from, only a more variable pie chart that will look different depending on the circumstances of each real estate transaction. So let's clarify this a little bit. If we back up to the 90s and we think about what it was like to buy a home back then, the way you would do that is you would go to a realtor's office and you would look at his or her book of all of the houses that they were selling. And these houses that they were selling were all sellers that the realtor already had a contract with. It might not have been all of the houses in that city that were for sale, but it was all of the houses that that agent had a connection with. And so if you found a house in that book of pages that you liked and you made an offer on the home and the seller accepted the offer, the agent who already represented the seller would now also help the buyer purchase that home. Eventually, as real estate transactions got more and more complicated, buyers began to realize that that realtor was representing the seller, not necessarily representing them, the buyer. So buyers started to say, hey, we need also representation in these transactions. And we also want to be able to see all of the homes that are in this area, not just the one that this realtor has. This in the 90s created the MLS, and we also put in the MLS the amount of money we were offering the buyer's agent so that the buyer had representation, and this created the role of the buyer's agent. Unfortunately, though, this certainly led to the sellers having to pay the most amount of commission for the seller's realtor and for the buyer's realtor. And so it didn't work out in the long run. And this is essentially what the lawsuit is all about. These are what the changes are hoping to fix. Again, a more variable pie chart, not one that is increasing or decreasing, but where the commissions are coming from different places. Another big factor for where commission comes from is the contract that the seller has with the seller's realtor. In that contract are a bunch of details, including the address of the home and how much they're going to sell the home for. But one of the sections of this contract is how much the commission is going to be, how much the seller's realtor is going to get, and how much the buyer's realtor is going to get. Whatever the amount was that the seller was going to contribute to the buyer's realtor was the number that was put into the MLS, which also showed up in Zillow and Redfin and all of the other third-party platforms that have those home listings. All have also the amount of commission for the buyer's agent. But starting in July of this year, they're going to remove that in hopes of creating a difference in where the commissions are coming from. Another part of this settlement is that the National Association of Realtors is now going to require that buyers, realtors, and buyers have a contract. And this contract will state, among other things, the amount of commission that the buyer's realtor is expecting. Here in Georgia, we have always had this requirement for a contract between the buyer's realtor and the buyer, and this contract states the amount of commission that the buyer's realtor is expecting to receive, and each different buyer's realtor fills it out differently, and where the commission comes from, again, is negotiable and is different with every single different buyer's realtor. How exactly all of these changes from the lawsuit settlement will shape the real estate industry is really unknown. Nobody knows exactly how it's all going to shape the industry. My guess, in case maybe I'm right one day and I can point back to this video, my guess is that there won't be very much change here in Georgia. Again, every state is going to be different. Every city is going to be different. The way that real estate is done in the city of Atlanta is different than the way it's done in the suburbs of Atlanta. There are different practices. There are different realtors. So it's all going to be different in different areas. But the way I think it would be here in North Metro Atlanta is that I don't think there will be very much difference. I think many sellers here in North Metro Atlanta have already realized that if they decrease commissions, they don't get as many buyers coming to see the home. It really favors the seller to offer a higher commission amount to the buyer's realtor, because this means that you're getting more exposure for the home. More people are coming to see the home, and the more amount of people that come to see the home, the higher the purchase price theoretically would be for that home. But again, this is just my guess. If you have any questions about this commission or the NAR settlement, feel free to call or text me anytime. I'm happy to go over any part of it with you. I really appreciate everybody who has called and asked about relocating here to the Atlanta area. I love helping people with their relocation to Atlanta. And if you want to know more about real estate, be sure to subscribe to the channel where we talk all about home buying and selling on this channel. I'll see you in the next video.